know from just the conversations around the table this morning that power is an issue, that supply is an issue, that dwell times are an issue, and these are all things that we have to consider. And I suppose one of the things that becomes very, very obvious very quickly is no matter, I think Kate sort of touched on it earlier, no matter what your business does, there has to be a business case to electrify, otherwise it won't work. And that is right at the very start where we get involved, is how the vehicles behave, what the requirements are, what the capacity on site is. Do you need a new connection? Have you been in consultation with DNOs, as you mentioned previously, IDNOs you mentioned before? Can we be involved at that very, very early stage to reduce costs and pain and delays and time and pinch points and all those sorts of things, because it's not simply a case of supplying a handful of chargers and wishing you all the best, because they won't work. That's what we do. I suppose that's what we believe we do differently, is that we like to be involved along that whole journey to understand what it is that's needed, so that it's not simply a case of being asked for a price for 10 units.
And do you bring in the power supplies to the site?
Yeah, so the idea being that you give us, figuratively speaking, in a hypothetical world, we identify 10 charging bays and a charging need. We'll fund it, plan it, design it, install it, support it, maintain it at our cost through an investment program, but obviously the payback period is through the cost of the charging to the user. Yeah. Now, how that's operated is not necessarily up to, if you want to use it like a petrol pump, if you want to pay for your electricity in that manner for your commercial fleets, where cost is an issue, where power is an issue, where all those sorts of expertise areas is an issue, we're more than comfortable with that. But it also opens itself up to a public use space as well. But we can hybrid that, we can close it down during working hours. There's many, many things you can do through the way that these things are operated. But the idea would be that because certainly from my point of view, where you're talking about these charging speed, the financial barriers are significant. And if you can remove those, then you're halfway there. And this is why we have started Rapid Charge Anywhere as a sort of, as it's not an aside, it's kind of like part of what we do already, is that the biggest on a public service, if you're not being utilised, you're not earning money. But equally, these charges they're not, in my opinion, they're not the right specification. So they have issues, they have faults, they break, and then they don't have a wraparound support piece that keeps them operational. So because of that, you either have chargers that are inoperable, out of action, broken, or in some cases they're too expensive and people don't use them.
This sort of solution could be the answer to my problem, and anywhere where we have a station that literally is living on the edge of its power requirement because of all the kit we have in stations as well as in cars. But to have somebody come along and go, well, if you need TX equipment and you need a substation, we'll do that, we'll put the charges in, we'll give you what you require, and this is the commercial deal around it, procurement.
Isn't that what CCS is there for, though, isn't it?
CCS can do it, yeah.
I mean, there is another complication on hospital sites, which you're probably not necessarily fully aware of, because it's PFI, basically.
It's what, sorry?
It's PFI, the Public Finance Initiative, which built most of the new hospitals which are around today.
Yeah.
Not all of them, started off doing some of them, and obviously the Royals, now not PFI, but a lot of the others are. And actually doing anything on the sites is an absolute nightmare. And we know, because trying to do modifications to our own buildings, I mean, you've got to go through a process of working with what's called the SPV, the provider of the building. Mm-hmm. You've got to work through them to actually build that, to get all the plans through. So everything, you're not just working with the hospital, you're actually working with the SPV. And they have a part of the PFI guidance is that basically they've got their own project management oversight, so everything costs more money, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you a simple example. One of those fancy hot water taps. Now, I can get one installed for about £2,500. If I go through the PFI, takes 14 months, it cost me £5.5 grand. And it just, the length of time and, you know, the extra money is just, and I was going to mention PFI because a lot of them are coming to an end now. And there's been a lot in the press about all the problem with schools. And we've already started the process with Bam Nuttall of, because as you get into the last 10 years, you should really be having agreements and working through, and the Home Office had run some quite big workshops on this for people, because they've got to leave the building in a fit place. So we know that in the last 8 years of this contract, we're going to have all replacement windows. This will cost a lot of money because of the performance gap between the power they pay and the power we pay, which is a big gap with electricity prices. They're proposing, although it's 8 years from the end, putting in massive CHP, putting 600,000 kilowatts of power on the roof in PV. But so although PFI has got a bad press, somebody mentioned a sort of a public-private partnership, which I'm all for, because I hope we've learned our lessons from PFI.
Yeah, we don't actually share them at the moment. We did want to kind of come together as a business and have joint infrastructure, but we didn't have enough electric capacity on site at the time. Now, CWP, Cheshire Rural Partnership, we were building a new model and baby unit. Now, with this, we could actually get some money to actually get some more electricity supply on. We couldn't share this with the Countess because of the way that procurement works. So we really desperately want to work in collaboration, and I already work with Mick and other NHS, 17 NHS trusts across Cheshire and Mersey. But there are some policies and the way that separate trusts are managed that stop us from doing this, and we are still doing things in silo.
That's the perfect introduction, actually, because I'm the Environment and Sustainability Lead for Cheshire Constabulary and Cheshire Fire and Rescue, and I also chair the National Emergency Services Environment and Sustainability Group. But even in Cheshire, working for these two organisations, I could be on two different planets.
I think policing has got some challenges, and it's interesting that you talk about the interoperability between all the different services, you know, at a very low level. At any given moment in time, someone mentioned that the racing's on today, you know, if something went off at Aintree today, you would see Lancs, Cheshire, all responding. In Merseyside, you would then potentially see GMP and West Yorkshire moving into places like Lancashire and other counties who bought it. We were all running the EV fleet. We need to be able to tap into each other's charging infrastructure. And I think they're just some of the challenges that we've got as we think about what vehicles can do what.
The most well-funded and most publicised would be the zero-emission heavy goods vehicles infrastructure demonstration program. So that is 4 projects where we are funding some infrastructure, some vehicles across sort of 4 consortia who install infrastructure up and down the country. So there is some infrastructure going in the northwest and also everywhere else. There is a bit of a gap sort of between about where we are now and up to Scotland. So like the most northern bits of England aren't really funded, but right now there is a lot of infrastructure going on. If you have any questions about that, please do come and see me, because even though there's an existing funded program, there's always opportunities for sort of infrastructure sharing, and so we can sort of introduce you to the people who are running those. And because it is heavy goods vehicles, there is a lot of fast charging available at these sites, so potentially some synergies for those sort of quick stop use cases.
But it's interesting listening to some of the interoperability conversation that's just been happening, especially your comments about can we charge a police vehicle in a council yard? Because I think this is where you have to be very careful about how you think about what policing do. So I've got a fleet of 2 halves. One side of my fleet's dead easy. We'll charge it in the nick at slow place overnight. Not an issue. Don't even break into a sweat about it. My response fleet, when do we think it's got time to go into a council yard and charge? It needs to leave the nick, stay out, do an 11-hour shift, come back to the nick, charge quickly and go back out.
It's charging. We've just had this fantastic new building, not quite complete, women and children's building. Nowhere in their plans are to or were to put an ambulance charging point on at the A&E. Our A&E is one of those A&Es that ambulances sit outside of, and I'm talking 9, 10 to 20 ambulances for hours on end daily. It is one of those trusts. Who pays for that point to be fitted? That would be the first question from my board. How are we getting that money back? Because regardless, it would be coming through our power.
No, that wouldn't be the. Well, that
Size
would
of
not
that
be
roof, stick a load of solar panels on it.
Even if it was separate power, somebody's going to get billed for that power.
we would.
So how would that be recharged? How would we stop? Or so we don't just not just provided by West Lancs, West Midlands, by Wirral. The ambulance services come from a massive area. We're on the cusp of Wales as well. I was going to say Welsh Wales, Wales as well. Different trust, different health service. It's how you recharge that back, or how would that be recharged back? How would you know?
And also, we buy the 4.25 tonne ones, so they've got tacho, speed limiter, we've got all these restrictions on them that hopefully the government are going to change very soon, which I think the AA have the same problem now. So.
In terms of the Category B licences, this was a draft that's gone in, and we're hoping that both houses of Parliament are going to approve this, is to allow Category B holders to drive ZEV up to 4.25 tonnes or 5 tonnes for ZEVs fitted with specialist equipment for disabled passengers. Allow Category B holders to drive ZEV of class including subcategory D1 not exceeding 4.25 tonnes, subject to certain conditions on the regulations. We did look at the removing of the 5-hour training requirement, but I'm not sure whether that's going yet. I think we've removed that. Don't quote me on that. The other one that we're looking for is to remove the restriction on vehicle use, i.e. exclusively for transporting goods as well, and allowing towing in certain circumstances. So the derogation only applies when driving ZEV vehicles effectively. So that's where we're up to with that.
That's the one I've kept, because that's the one that gave the driver the ability and the knowledge of how to get the best out of the vehicle. And that was the one we took away, and I was like, after all, it was the DFT, the AFP thing, and I said that to him, we went, what do you know? Yeah, they took the rest away, kept the training. As mandatory.
What about the MOT requirements?
MOT requirements.
We've had 100 vehicles due MOT, and we've got them all done now, but we've really struggled to get places to MOT them.
And I think
we had vehicles out that we couldn't put on the road because we were out of MOT. We couldn't get people to do them because Ford can't do them because they can't do the MOT on an HCV. So we were having to take the vehicles to Mercedes. So you got a load of Ford Transits parked outside Mercedes dealerships. It's not right. No, because they were up to 3.5 tonne. You can't do a HCV MOT at their sites.
One of the other observations as to people why they don't take on battery electric vehicles is the maintenance. Not necessarily the maintenance, but where they can actually have the work done, and more particularly any accident damage. At the moment, a lot of body shops won't actually touch them, or they'll put them to one side, and they will be quite scared of them. Not everybody, but a lot of them are a little bit sort of hesitant about getting involved in actually repairing these vehicles. But there is a massive market there for it.
It's a really interesting one, and obviously there's people far more qualified than me. I'm not technical at all, but I remember a guy, when I worked for PT, who actually owned Aurelius when they bought Pullmans and stuff. And the guy said there, though, like you hit the kill switch and actually you just work in like a dead vehicle. He said, so as long as you know how to kill a vehicle, and then you can work on it. It's when people don't know. So it's that little piece of training. I mean, all of our guys are trained to level 2, 3, and that will improve. But garages.
So
I
you
think
do your own servicing and maintenance in-house?
well, no, a little bit. Some of the SMR, yeah, we do have some mobile guys, and we do use network as well. And I think on the last look at that, there's about 60% of them with EV capability. Now the interesting thing was there's this idea of whether you should just take it back to manufacturers and just take it back to dealers, and not let third party.
We do the servicing with Ford, but not the MOTs. Yeah.
But we've also had quite a lot of difficulties in putting points in other places. So we've had difficulties. So we built a relatively new unit that's opened about 12 months ago, actually. And it's got an undercroft car park. And that particular car park, we had originally planned to put 2 electric charging points in there as a start. We bought the points and everything, they were ready to go in. Then we had some issues with a fire brigade who basically told us that we couldn't put them in there. And they didn't like the idea of electric cars going into that car park. So as it currently stands, we have limited usage of that car park and we aren't allowed to park any electric vehicles in that car park because it was underneath a building and they were concerned that if there was a fire with one of those vehicles, it would burn the building down and be a very difficult position to be in. So we've had difficulties like that. We've also had difficulties with some of our insurance companies insisting on charging points being a set distance from buildings, which obviously you'd not achieve on an undercroft car park. But so although we've got them already in our multi-storey car park, we have faced some growing challenges really. They've not gone away.
I think this was originally raised by Zurich in a guideline document, and I know many police and fire and public organisations are covered by Zurich, and they did talk about 7.5 metres from buildings, but I've rolled out a complete EV infrastructure on fire with risk assessment, with full collaboration with senior fire officers and with the insurance company. And most of my charges are bolted to buildings. There's no guidelines to say you can't do that, no law. People do say that you shouldn't put them near open windows or open doors, but you don't normally want to park a car outside an open window anyway. So I just wanted to pick that up. So I think you can question back to insurance companies around this because there's been a lot of bad press, particularly around Luton Airport incident, which wasn't an EV in the end. But as I said, on Cheshire Fire, as of next week, and it's only delayed while we've been doing this 3-month refurbishment, every site within Cheshire now has EV infrastructure. As per our strategy, by the end of this year, every non-blue light vehicle will be electric. In terms of the blue light fleet, outside of actual fire appliances, our managers and watch managers who respond under blue light have slowly moved from diesel to petrol to hybrid. And in the last couple of weeks, a couple of station managers have chosen to move on to the i5 BMW.
We did a Mythbuster, didn't we? So we did. I mean, you get the thing, it's only the last 10 years, so people don't want to buy a second-hand one because it's been run for 6 years by someone. So you get 20 years out of a diesel. All these things that aren't correct. They're going to go on fire. We've had 2 vehicle fires and they've both been diesels.
Yeah.
We've not had an electric vehicle on fire. Yeah. So it is all myth.
I'm a data person by nature. So I developed, I did a page on our electric transits, on what they're actually getting data-wise, miles per kilowatt, by body type, by season, which I shared with I did the Lex Auto Lease event, the electrification event that they did, and a fair few people from there have taken that page away, because I think it's key to have real life data, not just what it says in the brochure, because unless you're downhill with a back brace and no load on, you're never going to get those figures. So I think it's really key to be very transparent on data and what you can actually get out of these vehicles.
I think Chris mentioned data. There's companies out there who are pushing to do all the sort of software industry data. I think that the truth is right now we don't know what data we need. And I think so for events like this, and I certainly went, other events where operators together, IFP and stuff, I think it's brilliant that, we're sort of knowledge sharing, is really important to everybody.
Similar use case, but our vehicles, we have 140 sites across the UK and Ireland. And we use telematics to do our electrification plan. So obviously we did it based on journey duration. We bracketed it by, how many times did they do a 50-mile journey in a day? How many times did they do a 100-mile journey, 150, 200 miles in a single go? And we've transitioned about 25% of our LCV fleet based on that use case of, well, okay, so can a job be done in a day without charging? And that seems to be your biggest question is, well, do you have a vehicle that can do an entire day's work without the requirement of charging?
Yeah, and we do. The point I was trying to make, our focus is on what the person's doing, not what the car's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we could have a really efficient car with a really inefficient vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the private from the private sector, so I know how we look at trucks and vans and whatnot in the private sector. Coming to police, and if I showed you what my utilisation percentage is on my telematic data, because my telematics tracks the same as it would a DHL truck, for example.
Yeah.
Well, but it's shocking because it's only monitor mileage and key on time. The point I was trying to make is how we think about charging a car in my job is very different about how we'll do it in your role.
One thing I will add is we did bring a hydrogen car in about 2 years ago as a trial, but wherever we put it, we just couldn't fill it. So we put it into Essex, they closed the site. We put it into Hull, they closed the site. So we ended up having it for about 12 months and using it about 3 times, I think. So.
Two tried a hydrogen vehicle, had exactly the same issue. Can't get any supply. I think nobody's mentioned the ZEV mandate, which is really interesting because I guess that's our biggest challenge.
Yeah, I'll talk
Wait for you
about
to
that
say
if you want.
and I think, complying with the ZEV mandate and how the impact on operations is probably our biggest challenge. 4.25 tonne, absolutely. Smaller vehicles, payload, network charging, difference in the price between home charging and network charging.